Hey, before this video starts, I just want to say thank you for clicking on the video. I assume if you clicked on this video that you're interested in Beastmaster Hunter or just hunters in general, and I'm just going to do a little bit of a commentary over, the kind of the decisions I'm making and why I'm doing the things I'm doing throughout the video. If you find it helpful or you enjoy watching it, I guess, like if you enjoy the gameplay, go ahead and like the video. If there's something you didn't like, leave a comment down below so I can work on it. But other than that, thanks for clicking on this video and I hope you enjoy. Also forgot to mention this footage was streamed from my Twitch. I'll leave a link down in the description below if you want to check that out. But yeah, hope you enjoy. So right here, there's like two types of pulls that could typically happen. Some tanks will just pull the giant off here to the left solo. If he does that, which happens in this case, I typically hold off on my cooldowns. But if your tank feels comfortable enough and along with the healer and he decides to pull the giant along with the three mobs or the three mushrooms to the right, I would pop all your cooldowns, your wild spirits, and just AoE all that down. But in this case, he just pulls the giant off to the left solo, and so I save my cooldowns until this next pull for the three mushrooms on the right. One little tip for these first few pulls in this dungeon, these stormers, when they start spinning around and doing a huge AoE to your party, you can, as a BM hunter, you can actually stun that with your intimidate. But if you're a marksman, and BM can do this as well, you can ice trap it to stun it as well, and it's very useful. It always helps your party out, and always make sure you trank as much as you possibly can if the Wonder Grow ever gets off. And then also, for this week, one of the affixes is Inspiring, and you want to make sure you always focus down the Inspired first, because they make all of the mobs around them immune to CC effects or interrupts while they're alive in a 15-yard radius. So always make sure you get those ones down first. So for this next pull right here, I always misdirect the tank, and you can do this as marksman as well. It helps the tank build threat, and you can actually DPS and pad the meters before everyone else, because you're the only class besides rogue that can DPS before everyone else, because the tank has to build threat, right? I always do that, and then I talent binding shot for this dungeon specifically for these two slime dudes, the right and the left. Because one of their abilities is Beckon Slime, and it's really annoying if you don't have a good comp where they can all just CC it like the Druid does a couple times here, or because we have a Demon Hunter tank, he fears them, I think. But you always just want to talent binding shot if you're BM just for this dungeon. It'll be really helpful, especially for the tank, because he doesn't have to kite as much. You just slap that down and stop all the slimes from healing the big dude, right? And of course, if you're a marksman, you already have this, but just BM specifically. So for Pridefuls, it's always useful, especially if you have a lot of ranged, to get in a straight line after the first proc of the little AoE stun that happens. You'll see 4 red lines around a person. It's not going to happen here, and it doesn't happen mostly throughout this dungeon. That's just one little tip I thought I could add, is you could just go in a straight line, and it makes it a lot less stressful for everyone. Also, I typically save all my cooldowns for prides just because you get a pretty good haste and damage buff, and it's more worth a while to use that after you get the pride buff rather than on a pride. But if it's, and sometimes it does depend on the situation. If it's an emergency, like the tank accidentally pulled too much, got the percentages messed up, and now a pride's in the middle of your pack, then I would blow my cooldowns on a pride. But for the most part, if your tank knows what he's doing and he pulls safe and he's got the percentages down right, you never really want to use any of your cooldowns on a pride. So we actually nuke this boss fairly fast, so you don't really get a chance to see it, but when the boss beckons Slime as a marksman or as a BM, as a hunter in general, you really want to have your ice trap ready. Once you do the mechanic enough, you'll get really used to predicting which slime is going to be the legendary one. We always want to ice trap the legendary one, because if that gets off and the slime starts going to the boss and you don't have a high DPS group like we did, it can really fuck up your pull sometimes, and sometimes sometimes that creates a wipe. So you want to always make sure to ice trap that big legendary slime. So our tank does kind of a big pull here, but there's a couple things you want to look out for as a hunter, and especially BM hunter. I always focus the big dude just because the little guys, once they get low enough, they'll start running away, and if your pets stick to them, they can actually pull more mobs that you probably didn't want to pull in the first place, and that can really fuck up and cause a wipe sometimes, or just mess up the percentages for prides. So I always focus the big dude just so there's no risk of my pets running off and pulling a bunch of extra mobs. And then also, when you do see your all the mobs running away, you can throw down a binding shot, and it can really help, because sometimes you'll kill them before there's even a risk of them running off and pulling more. And also intimidate if you can. Unfortunately, I didn't have my cooldowns at the beginning of this pack, but usually I would pop my cooldowns here for big cleave and AoE. And then if I have turtle, I'll always turtle those little slimes, just because if you don't step on those slimes or kill those slimes, they'll actually metamorphosize into a bigger slime, and it's just really annoying. So always walk over them or DPS them down just before they metamorphosize. And then, just like I said at the beginning of this video, and you'll see throughout this entire dungeon, you always want to focus down the inspiring.
I still think about it every now and then. Wait, will I?
So here you'll actually see me stand in this red gunk on the ground. Now, if your healer can't keep up with it, or you're taking too much damage, I would not recommend standing in it, because your healer will absolutely hate you. But while you do take damage while you stand in this red gunk, it actually gives you a haste buff, and if you're going to pop all your cooldowns like I try here, it can actually really help with your DPS.
Will I ever learn to love again? Will I ever learn to love again?
So unfortunately here we do have a wipe, and I was able to, save the day and clear the rest of the mobs, but what ended up happening is actually at the end of this pack, Pride was summoned, and it really fucked up. Like, we tried to reset and we tried to get a heal off, and it really fucked with our time. But I'm just gonna speed past all this until we get to this next pack. But unfortunately, that is what happened. Is this pride just really fucked us, and it set us back in time just a little bit.
Haven't seen me this summer, all to myself. Life is a bummer. I lost my heart, so I need another. All alone, can't take it no longer. All of my friends haven't seen me this summer. All to myself, life is a bummer. I lost my heart, so I need another.
So here, our tank decides he wants to skip past this, so I talented Camouflage just so we can walk past this. Unfortunately, our priest didn't have any way to invis or mind soothe past this pack, so he had to unfortunately take the L, take the loss and suicide until we could res him back up again, but that's just what we do here. So you always want to make sure you have all of your cooldowns for that big pack that we skipped at the bottom of those stairs. We skipped that, so I ended up using my cooldowns on this tentacle right after, but just putting that in there, if you're not going to skip that by either doing an alternative route or just skipping it like we do, you always want to make sure you have all of your cooldowns for that pack.
Life is a bummer.
So just as you see here, your tank should always be going on the other side, like he does here on the opposite end, because there is this pat that runs back and forth here, these little suicide bombers. And if you have melee in your group, it's really annoying for them because if the bomb goes off right under the tentacle, it makes it a lot harder for them to DPS. And if you want to help out on the second tentacle, you can throw down a biting shot just in front of the tank. Just so it's a little bit easier on the melee if you have any.
But not in yours. I wish I can take you back, make every moment last. If you felt what I felt, remembered completely, maybe then you'd see how happy you were with me.
So for these plague binders, if your tank hasn't already, or if he can't silence these guys, you want to make sure you always interrupt them, just because there is the possibility that the boss could pat over to where these guys are, and you could accidentally pull them if you don't get them off to the side quick enough. So just make sure you always interrupt them so they run up to the tank and are able to get out of the way.
But I don't see what you want. Is it us?
And so just like in the last pack, you want to interrupt the plague binder just so that it's easier for the tank to get him off to the side so you don't accidentally pull the boss. And because it is inspiring, I'm focusing him down first, but typically there's a purple slime. You want to focus the purple slime down first always if it isn't inspiring, just because he will cause reduced damage to all of the enemies nearby. So typically you would focus the purple one down first, but because it is inspiring, we're focusing the inspired first, or at least I am.
Take you back, make every moment last. If you felt what I felt.
So just like before, you want to interrupt the Plague Binder just to get him off to the side. I typically save my interrupt for the Gripping Infection, just because if that does get off and you're forced to sit in the big guy's massive AoE brown circle and take huge damage, it's really not good, and it can one-shot you on hierarchies. Now, if that does happen to you and you know, you're not a gnome and you have no way of getting out of it, I always use my turtle just to be extra safe and not die, because you can get one shot if that ever happens to you.
Happy you were with me. All of the good times, they're fresh in my mind. You and I, by the ocean side. That shadow in your eye, oh God, I've been so blind. I stand there staring, my own life goes by. You had a mask when I was naked, had nothing to hide. And now you say you need some time to stop.
So there's a couple of mechanics you want to watch out for in this fight. One of them, there's a little slime that will spawn occasionally throughout the fight. If you can, you want to try and walk over that, just so it doesn't turn into a really big, so it doesn't metamorphosize into a really big slime. Also, after he jumps, you really want to nuke, and if you can, save your cooldowns for the bomb slime that comes. You want to nuke that down. And then after that's dealt with, you want to focus on the purple slime, because it causes reduced damage, I think by like 90%, 80%, something high like that, to the boss. So you always want to focus down the purple slime, and then you can go back to DPSing the boss. One other mechanic to look out for is occasionally the boss will start jumping onto players, onto your teammates during the fight. Now, you can predict this because the lines are always going to be front, back, left, and right. So if he's going straight at you, you can just go, to the left. Or you can just go straight and to the left. So you want to go in a diagonal direction just to avoid it. And if it happens to one of your teammates right by you, just make sure you're always going diagonally to him, just so you can avoid that. And this is going to repeat throughout the fight. You just want to watch out for these things. You shouldn't have a problem. So there are a couple different routes you can take here, but if just like mine does, if you go straight down the middle, you want to make sure you have all your cooldowns, just so everything can die quicker and less risk of a wipe. Also, starting here in this part of the dungeon, there's going to be these defender guys, and occasionally they have an ability where they'll cast a bubble and everything takes reduced damage in there. As a hunter, you can always ice trap them, or if you're BM, you can stun them with your intimidate to break that bubble, and just so you can start DPSing them more. And you'll see these mobs a couple times up until the third boss.
Up into a wall because you can't relate. I'm not the first, I won't be the last. Do you really think that we could ever get it back?
So for this ambusher here, just like my group does, you don't really want to interrupt the webbing, just because if you do, the stealthlings, he'll start casting his stealthlings ability quicker. So if you hold off on interrupting it until either the last second or don't interrupt it at all, there's less of a chance that the stealthlings will spawn. So just make sure you watch out for that, and then also, just like we do here, focus down the inspirings first if you can, and then also, if the stealthlings do get out, there's not a lot you can do as a hunter to stun them. You don't really have a massive AoE stun. All you can do is, you know, throw down your flare just so people can see it, or you can throw down binding shot just so, you know, it looks like you're doing something. It doesn't really stop them from casting it because they'll still cast it, but they'll get rooted afterwards. But there's not really a whole lot you can do. Just focus them and AoE them down as hard as you can. So for this boss that's coming up, there's a couple mechanics that you want to look out for. One, you have to stay grouped with people, and typically people just stack on the boss, and what'll happen is occasionally there's this purple circle that'll happen to you. As a hunter, you can always turtle it so you don't take damage or get stunned, but you always want to kite away from the group when that happens to you, just so you don't stun everybody and, you know, fuck everybody else up. Also, after that, she's gonna summon her little minions. As a hunter, what you could do is, especially as BM, you can run around and continue to DPS and break them out, but you can also use your flare to reveal them, and they'll get broken. So you could do that to help your group down, and then you just want to AoE them all down. And this will happen throughout the fight until she's dead, and as long as you look out for those things, you shouldn't have a problem. And I don't know if I said this, but you want to make sure you're lessening first and third boss, typically, just like I do here. So you're not always going to be pulling these, it just depends on the route you take, but if your tank pulls all of them down together, just like mine does here, you want to make sure you always focus down the purple one first, just because he does cause reduced damage to all of the other mobs around him.
Search for flower beds in front of me, surrounded by a glowing city. I find myself better in the air, but the silence makes me scared, and by that time I go nowhere, like I'm stuck in the ground.
So if your tank decides that you want to skip this first pack first and go either left or right. Just make sure you're constantly jumping through these pools, because if you don't, you're going to get a debuff on you that will pretty much kill you. I haven't seen a healer in all of my runs that has been able to actually save somebody from that. So just make sure you're jumping through these pools, because if you don't, you will die and it is not fun. So just make sure you jump through these pools on the left or right side if you do skip this first pack.
Oh, won't you guide me home? Lead me toward the unknown. Let me follow your side. Guide me through the night.
So if you're doing a key that's a 10 and above, you want to make sure as this last mob is dying that you go back to the bottom of the stairs, just because pride will spawn and you don't want to accidentally pull the boss with pride, because that's unless you have a really strong group, that's definitely going to be a wipe.
Flower beds in front of me, surrounded by a glowing city. I find myself better in the air, but the silence makes me scared. I'm about to...
So there's a couple mechanics you want to watch out for in this fight. There's 3 phases. In the first phase, she's going to be summoning a slime ad occasionally. You want to always be focusing him down as quickly as possible, but also run to the area that he came up, because that's always going to be a guaranteed safe zone. Because there's going to be these slime, or there's going to be these, what you want to call it, these slime tentacles basically that she's going to spawn, that if you do get hit by it, you will get one shot on higher keys. Now you can always turtle it just to be safe, but you're going to be wanting to save that for her acid rain mechanic that she will be doing in all the phases pretty much. If your healer can't keep up with it, you want to make sure you always use your self heal on it. And if it happens again, you want to make sure to turtle it, because you will deflect all the damage that is taken upon you. In the second phase, this slime ad is going to spawn again. And then there's going to be these bone guys that spawn. And you always want to focus down the bone guys. The only time you don't want to focus down the bone guys is in the third phase. Because by the third phase, it's really a rush to kill the boss, just because the quicker she's dead, the easier it's going to be and all the stress will be gone. But I'll say it again, you want to avoid all the tentacles. When the slime guy pops up, you want to run to where he was and focus him down, because that'll be a safe zone, and you just want to avoid the tentacles basically. And like the acid rain, you know, use your self heal on it and then turtle it if that wasn't enough. So, if you made it to the end of the video, first of all, thank you so much. If there was anything you didn't like, or anything that you still have questions about, or if there's any advice you want, just leave a comment down below and let me know. Like it if you liked it. If you didn't like it, dislike it. Leave a comment why. But other than that, I have my Twitch link down in the description below. If you like this sort of content and you want to see it again, feel free to subscribe or ring the bell for our notifications. I'm going to be working on posting more and being a little bit more active, but yeah, like it if you liked it, and peace.